Okay. This is a study vlog, study with me vlog, and I will spend as much time as I can studying. This is task 6 in Delta Module 2, and it's about language awareness. This is the task, and I'll be sharing it with you during this study time. Some other documents I might be sharing. So let's get started. If you have any questions, you can leave in the comments and I get back to them. This task is to start you thinking about the theory or the knowledge you need to do grammar focus LSA. It goes with task 7, which is more practical elements, how you can teach a grammar. That was task 7, yes. And we had a Zoom session about it. Later, inshallah, I might do task 7, which is about grammar, and then share it with you. Or maybe we have it as a study vlog as well. Or maybe video tell you how was the Zoom session about. How was the Zoom session? It was about grammar, so yeah. To teach it though, first you need to understand it yourself. In fact, that's grammar. In fact, you need to understand it really well so you can decide what to include and when, what you can leave out, when you can give rules of thumb, and how to write things like concept check questions that you will use in the actual lesson. If I show you the following: up, and, he, that, the, in, Bill, Jane, stand, announce, spring, Mary. What do you instinctively and immediately want to do? What do you instinctively and immediately want to do? I want to, yeah, most people want to order the words, right? Okay, that's one thing. Have a correct structure for this one. Second thing, what I thought about was categorizing the words according to parse speech. Is that enough? If you can move them around, will you be satisfied? If I think if we try to move these words around, be Bill stood up and announced that he will marry Jane in the spring, maybe. So we changed some stuff. There is something else, isn't there? Okay, task 6A. In task 6A, your task is to respond. In your task response document, write down what the 2 areas I'm trying to bring to your attention here. What are the 2 areas and how they relate to each other and to grammar, and how you understood what they were from those 12 sentences. Okay. I'll get back to that. This idea is from the first chapter of Michael Swan's book Grammar. Though a lot of books that are about grammar start with something similar. He has a nice introductory piece on it. Here's okay, Mike Swan's. Let me share it with you and start reading that part. No, really. Why is this black? Yes. Okay, what is grammar? Grammar is the kind of question. Oh, yeah. What is grammar? Is the kind of question that seems easy to answer until somebody does ask it. Until somebody asks it. Okay. Reference books aren't very helpful. Dictionaries usually say something like the rules for combining words into sentences. This is seriously incomplete. Grammar does many things besides sentence building. The definition also says something about the reasons why we need such rules, their functions, as if one defined a bus as a large vehicle constructed on one or two levels without mentioning its use for public transport. Okay. To understand what grammar is, what it does, and why it is necessary, it helps to imagine language without it. Let's suppose that we're a tribe of intelligent pre-human primates who have decided to devise a rich communication system. We start by inventing distinctive vocal signs, words, for the various classes of things in our world, the equivalents of tree, rain, mother, axe, baby, bear, and so on. For their shared characteristics, big, good to eat, red, cold, and for processes and situations, eat, fall, die, rain, die, coming, gone. That's all. No grammar. What can we do with our new tool? First of all, we can indicate the existence of something or our need for something by using appropriate class word, bear, axe, eat. Secondly, okay, we can combine words to pin down individual members of classes. To ask for a particular axe, we can produce the equivalent of, for instance, axe big. So first thing we did, we indicate the existence of something or our need for something. How? by using appropriate class word. Second thing, combine words to pin down individual members of class. To ask for a particular X, we produce the equivalent of, for instance, X big. Okay. So the X, oh no, X big, which one? Okay. And thirdly, we combine words to indicate events or states of affairs. Uh-huh. Okay, X, not all axes. We need X big, okay, the big X in developed language. X big. What? Okay, I can say fall. So we say fall baby. Rain cold. Axe big. Break. Okay, and so on. We have invented language. Up to a point, we soon find, however, that our communication system has three serious limitations. First, it can't handle complex situations. Putting together our words for big, bear, and cave, for example, will not make it clear whether there is a big bear in the cave or a bear in the big cave. We can identify and talk about separate things in the word, but we can't clarify their causal, spatial, and other relations. For instance, if A is doing something to B, we can't show just by saying the words who or what is the doer or agent, and who or what is the doer or patient. Brother bear kill doesn't show who killed and who got killed. So that's the second problem. So first problem, can't handle a complex situation like big bear cave big bear or whatever. And the second one, who's the doer, who's the doer. Third thing is we can't get beyond requests and affirmative statements. Okay. Bear cave can convey the fact that there is a bear in the cave, but we have no way of asking whether there is a bear in the cave or suggesting that there may be, or saying that there isn't a bear in the cave. Okay. We have discovered the need for grammar. Okay, just now. Okay. One solution is to single the necessary extra meanings by word order. So now we need the word order. Okay, so if you get back to the 12 words, we need word order. The sentence structure, that's the first thing. We could decide to juxtapose words for connected ideas. We could decide to juxtapose, to place or deal with close together for constructing affect. Okay. To juxtapose words for connected ideas, putting the word for equality. For example, immediately before or immediately after the word, for the thing that has the quality. Bear, big, cave, small. Okay. So a solution is a single the necessary extra meanings by word order. So the word order itself has a meaning. Okay, not yeah, the word has a meaning, but then the word order has a meaning. Okay. We could also consistently put expressions for an agent earlier or later than other expressions so that brother kill bear and bear kill brother would have distinct meanings. Okay, so now we know who killed what or who, whatever. Who's the doer? Who's the doer? And we could use a different order for statements and questions. Brother kill big bear versus Bill brother big bear. That's kind of the question. Okay. Another strategy would be to alter words to signal their functions. Latin did this. I don't know how to pronounce that, but these are Latin words. So these two Latin words meant bear and brother, okay, as agents. As patients, they became okay. Okay, so that would be equivalent to the subject and the object, like I and me, they and them. Hmm. He and him. Okay. This trick, inflection. Okay. Inflection could also show what goes with what. Related words could all be changed or extended identically. Hmm. So that's equivalent to ضرب محمد عليا. So Muhammad is the subject, Ali is the object. And then if we keep the same order but change the last vowel on the words, we change the meaning. So say ضرب محمدا. So now that's the object. علي. So Ali is the subject. So Ali is the doer, and the doer is okay. Change in pitch to could indicate the functions of words or utterance, as when English speakers use intonation to distinguish questions and statements. Yeah. Yet another possibility would be to invent words whose purpose is to show the function of other words. English may does this. It indicates that a sentence refers not to a definite okay, but Japanese put small words, particles after nouns to mean such things as topic, agent, patient, or processor. They put small words after. Okay, suffixes. These strategies are all variants on three basic options. One, ordering, the one we talked about here at the beginning when we say the difference between brother kill bear, bear kill brother. So now who's the do, who's the d. So that's the first thing, ordering. Second thing is infliction. Infliction is this trick infliction. Where is it? Okay, when we add, when we change the endings of the words, signals their function by inflection. Okay. The third one, and the use of function words using may here. Okay, function words. Once we have selected from these three options the devices we want to use for our language, we have devised a grammar. We now have a human language. شغلة هذه. As Saudi people say. دي شغلة والله. حوار كبير, as Egyptian says. A big deal. Okay. So to answer the question we started with, grammar is essentially a limited set of devices for expressing a few kind of necessary meaning that can't be conveyed by referential vocabulary alone. Okay. If it is that simple, then why it is all so complicated? That's another story. Further reading, Michael Swan, Grammar, and Oxford Introductions to Language Study, Oxford University Press, 2005, especially Chapter 1. Okay. Well, I think we need to go back to the file, task file. Okay, so that's what we read. So how good is your grammar? Now this is a question for the one who's doing the Delta course. This link is not really working at the moment. Why not try this quiz and find out? The questions are from Kwan's book, The Teacher's Grammar of English. I downloaded the book. You can find it online as a PDF. But you better buy it. Which is a good one to consult if you are, okay, that's the book, which is a good one to consult if you're doing a grammar focus assignment. It isn't that you need to know all this grammar by heart, but you do need to know how to research the area you're focusing on and what kind of things to read about. Okay. The more you know, the better you can choose what to teach the learners. If you don't know and just accept what is delivered to you in a course book, you can run into all sort of trouble. Questions will be raised by learners that you don't know how to answer. What do I mean? Well, read through this presentation by Dave Wells. Okay. Read through this presentation. Read through this presentation. What do we mean by grammar? Commentary on accompanying PowerPoint presentation. Okay, slide one. What do we mean by grammar? The word grammar seemed to be fairly straightforward. We feel happy enough that we know what we mean by it. We use it all the time, and people seem to know what we're talking about. Okay. But I'm going to suggest in this presentation that grammar is a very dangerous word. It can lead to serious misunderstandings, and it can help to reinforce classroom practice, which frustrate learners' development. Slide two. My students know the grammar, but they can't use it. By the age of 5, children know most of the grammar of their mother tongue. You can't speak language unless you know the grammar. First comment, first quotation we have: my students know the grammar but they can't use it. When teachers say this, what they often mean is my students know the rules for forming do questions, for example, but they don't actually produce do questions. They always say things like what's your name, or where you live, or what mean rules. Okay. Quotation 2. By the age of 6, children know most of the grammar of their mother tongue. Our grandson, Sam, is 6 years old. Not surprisingly, he speaks English without any difficulty. He can use all the tenses and is constantly asking questions and so on. He even uses models with have. So clearly Sam knows the grammar of English because he's able to operate it without any trouble at all. Good. And but of course there is a sense in which he doesn't know the grammar at all. If you were to ask him, Sam, what are the rules for forming do questions? He would probably say, what is a do question? The phrase know the grammar is being used in two quite different ways here. In one, it means being able to cite the rules for forming acceptable sentences. But in two, it means knowing the system in a way that enables you to produce acceptable forms in the language, of the language. In one, it means knowing about the language, whereas in two, it means being able to use the language. Yeah. So what do teachers mean when they say, as some of them often do, you can't speak language unless you know the grammar? Okay. If they mean this in sense two, which is being able to use the language without knowing the rules, then they're saying you can't speak a language unless you can produce acceptable sentences, or you can't speak a language unless you can use the language. Hmm. And these aren't very useful things to say. All they mean is you can't speak a language unless you can speak the language. Okay. But if they mean this in sense one, then they are clearly talking nonsense. Sam certainly speaks the language, but he doesn't know the grammar in sense one at all. He can't explain the rules. He can't tell. He can't tell about. He can't tell about the difference between a do question and a double H question. And although he is a very bright 6-year-old, he certainly couldn't tell you what a model auxiliary is. Okay. You may think at this stage that this is because Sam is a native speaker, because he has acquired the language naturally, but I don't think this is the case. Let us look more closely at the relationship between grammar in sense 1, we'll call it grammar 1, and grammar in sense 2, we'll call it grammar 2. Slide 3. We use the present simple tense for things that we things that are always true, things that happen all the time, things that happen repeatedly. We use present continuous for things that are happening now. This is what learners are often taught. It's an example of grammar 1. Okay. Teachers explain and exemplify the rule. Learners are often asked to choose contrastively between one tense and another. Yes. They very quickly learn, for example, that in any sentence with with the adverb now, the verb should be present continuous. True. And that in any sentence with an adverb of frequency such as usually, always, sometimes, the verb should be in simple present. Yes, that what happens. If we apply this rule given above, then all these sentences are ungrammatical. Jack is at university. Jack is studying economics. We live in Birmingham now, but our son is living in London. Okay. Um, I'm playing a lot of tennis these days. Okay. At 8 o'clock, I'm usually having my breakfast. Okay. 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 Now, but almost any competent speaker of English will tell you that they are all grammatically acceptable. Yeah. Let's read. 1. Jack is at university. He's studying economics. If you're if you were to say this at 11 o'clock at night, you wouldn't expect anyone, you would expect someone to look at their watch and say, my word, Jack, must be a very con- um, conscious student. What the consciousness? Conscious. Okay. Conscious. Where is the word?
Conscientious.
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 Very conscientious student if he's studying now. It's 11 o'clock. Okay. Perhaps we can amend the rule and say we use the present continuous for things that are happening now or around now. So Jack isn't actually studying at the moment, but that's what Jack is normally doing. But then, what about this? Jack is with Unilever. He works in their accounts departments. Why isn't works in the present continuous since it tells us what Jack is normally doing? This is a very crazy thing from the first place about present simple and present continuous. Okay, two. We live in Birmingham now, but our son is living in London. This is doubly ungrammatical. Yeah. Mhm. We have now, the word now, with present simple tense, and the present continuous is living for something that happens all the time. How can we account for this? Perhaps it is to do with the nature of the verb live. Mhm. It represents a state rather than an action. That's why it is present simple, and we live in Birmingham now. But if it's the case, why it is continuous and our sense is living in London? The comment on that would be that could be for a short time. He's living there for a week or two. That's not where he usually lives, and maybe he lives already with his family. But for a short time, he's in London, temporary. Three, I'm playing a lot of tennis these days. Isn't that something that happens repeatedly? It is certainly not happening now unless it is said on a tennis court. Yeah, well, it is. Yeah, yeah, it happens repeatedly, but for these days only, not for what? Not for lifetime. I don't know. At 8 o'clock. Well, because you speak the language a lot as an English teacher, you listen to the language a lot. You're familiar with such um, sense when you know this structure is correct, this structure wrong, and then that makes it more difficult when you teach it to students. Um, when you teach something like I'm playing a lot of tennis these days, Why not? If it's a habit, why not? And it's repeated, why not simple present? So I play a lot of tennis these days. Um, and there is no now, and the meaning, it doesn't mean that this is happening now. So yeah, you could be chatting with your friend and then on your phone, and you say, so you're not in the tennis court when you're saying so. So yeah. Um, at 8 o'clock, I'm usually having my breakfast. This is an unfortunate one because it goes against the rules that all good learners are taught. Because at 8 o'clock, usually, why I'm having that we use the present simple with adverbs of frequency. According to the rule, this should be present simple because is is something it is something that happens repeatedly. Indeed, it's quite explicitly explicitly something that happens repeatedly. So why is it present continuous? Perhaps it's a very unusual use, the kind of thing we don't hear very often. But I don't think it is unusual at all. And it's certainly grammatical unless I use ungrammatical few minutes ago when I said, so Jack isn't actually studying at the moment. But that's what Jack is normally doing, using the present continuous with an adverb of frequency. Unless unless was ungrammatical a few minutes ago when I said using the present continuous with an adverb of frequency. Okay. So it seems there are a lot of kind of problems with the rules. In fact, we often have a choice between the simple and the continuous forms. We tend to use the continuous forms to, well, let's alone language interference and when you're teaching such a lesson, difference between present simple and present continuous, because in Arabic, for example, there is no such difference between. That's not exactly the grammar in Arabic for this point. It's whole another story. So students, let alone even verb to be, is not in English, is not in Arabic. We don't translate it. So yeah, that's a big. It seems like a very easy A1 grammar rule, but it is a big story. So it seems there are all kind of problems in the rules. In fact, we often have. Okay. It showed that something happens before and after a given time. At night, at 8 o'clock, I'm usually having my breakfast, or before and after another action. Okay, so use continuous to show that something happens before or after a given time. At 8 o'clock, I'm usually having my breakfast, or after before another action. When I get home, the children are normally doing their homework. Yeah, that makes sense. We almost always teach this as a feature of the past continuous. Yes, but it is actually a feature of all continuous forms. Yes, I remember I remember I teach it even in future. Yeah, but I never taught it. That wasn't one of any uses in present continuous in any course book I taught, which is using present continuous to talk about something in present that happens when something in simple present happens. Like this one. When I get home, that's simple present. Repeated action. The children are normally, you can say here, usually always doing their homework. Um, yep. Wow. That's a aha moment for me through the delta. Um, we also use the continuous form to mark something as temporary. Yeah. Um, this is perhaps why we can say Jack is at university. He's studying economics, and I am playing a lot of tennis these days. Okay, that's temporary. That's okay. And finally, we use the continuous form to indicate change. This is why we often find the continuous with verbs, which indicate change, as in, aren't the children growing quickly? Your English is really improving. Okay. That may be why I am playing a lot of tennis these days. Sounds natural because these days implies a change from previous times. Okay, so that is why change from previous time. It's not because it's temporary this time. Temporary is that one, but that's a change from previous time. Okay. Why? Oh, okay. That may be why I'm playing tennis. This is okay. Change, yes. And may say, oh yes, that's much too complicated. Let's just teach the simple rules so that our students don't make mistakes. We will look at this later. Okay. Okay. I think I'll stop here. Not for the whole, not for the video, but take a break. Look at the comments if there are any. I can't open the video. Don't know why. Where I can't find the video. Am I streaming? I think I should be streaming publicly now. There is live stream, yes. Okay, good. Okay, no comments so far. Let's get back. How many of these sentences are ungrammatical? I looked at the picture. I looked the picture at. I looked at it. I looked it at. I took out my wallet. I took my wallet out. I took it out. I took out it. It is easy. Okay. It is easy. Number two, 4 and 8 are clearly ungrammatical, but since 2 seems to be the same in a structure as 6, how is it that the first ungrammatical and the second is acceptable? And what about 3? I looked at it. And 8, I took out it. They appear to be the same, yet 3 is okay and 8 is ungrammatical. And the same applies for 4 to 4. I looked at it. I looked it at, okay, which is ungrammatical, and 7, I took it out, which is 7, which is fine. What is going on here? Okay, some verbs with prepositions can be separate. Slide 7. Two-part verbs. The children are growing up, so growing up are two-part verb. You can count on me. Count on two-part verb. One is intransitive, and the other one is transitive. Many two-part verb have the pattern noun, verb, preposition, noun. You can count on, that's the preposition, me. That's not the noun. Is it the noun? A subject could be a subject. Okay. I know I could count on my friends. Okay. Well, it is to do with phrasal verbs. In English, we have lots of phrasal verbs, lots of verbs made up of two parts. Some of them intransitive, like the children are growing up. No need for a subject, for an object. And some of them are transitive, like you can count on me. There are lots of two-part verbs which are transitive and have the pattern. Verb, proposition, particle. Okay, so here we'll call them particle. Verb, particle, verb, and okay, verb count, particle on. Okay, that's count on me. Okay. Verb, particle, noun. Okay, verb, particle, noun, count on me. Yes, okay. I know I would count on my friends. You can count on me. Okay. True phrasal verbs are followed by two patterns. He knocked over the vase. Noun, verb, particle, noun. He knocked the vase over. Noun, verb, noun, particle. Okay. So particle, noun, particle, verb, particle, noun, verb, noun, particle. If the object is a personal pronoun only, the first pattern occurs. Okay, so if the object, okay, so now we're talking about intransitive verbs. Intransitive verbs. If the object is personal pronoun, like this personal pronoun, only in this case, the first pattern occurs. So we have noun, verb, particle, noun. Okay. So it cannot be you can count me on. Like count on me because me is a personal pronoun and it's the object. So that's why only the first one happens. Okay. He knocked it over. He knocked over it. If the person looks only for the first person. Okay. Okay. That's slide 9. I think I'll a second. I will continue. Hmm. Verbs like grow up and count on are often called phrasal verbs, but I would like to keep the term phrasal verbs for a particular group of very common two-part verbs, which are followed by two possible patterns. And verb particle noun, he knocked over, so over is the particle, the vase noun, and verb noun particle will be he knocked the vase over. Let me call these true phrasal verbs. There is another interesting thing about these true phrasal verbs. If their object is personal pronoun, they are found with the second pattern. They are found with the second pattern. Mm, he, okay, verb knocked, noun it, particle over. He knocked it over, but not the first. He knocked over it. Hmm. The rules are followed by two patterns. He knocked it over. He knocked over it, so I knocked over it. Can't be. So if we looked back at slide 5, I think I already did. Now that that's 8. Slide 5. What's wrong? Where is slide 5? Hmm. We can explain things by saying that look at is a two-part verb, but take out is a true phrasal verb. A true phrasal verb. Okay, look at is a two-part verb. Mm, mm, okay, but this doesn't really tell us anything very useful. It doesn't tell us how we can recognize what is a two-part verb and what is a true phrasal verb. True phrasal verb have configurative meaning, figurative meaning. True phrasal verbs have figurative meaning. Compare run up a bill and run up hill. But compare also take in, take out, and take after, take against. Sometimes people say that true phrasal verbs have a figurative rather than literal meaning. So run up a bill is a phrasal verb, whereas run up a hill isn't. But it isn't very helpful. Lots of true phrasal verbs mean more or less literally what they say. If you take something and then take means take, and and in means in. The same applies to take out. Yet both of these are true phrasal verbs. On the other hand, take after, as in he takes after his father, isn't a true phrasal verb, even though the meaning is clearly figurative. Take doesn't mean literally take, and after doesn't mean after. Hmm. Okay, the same applies to take against, as in he took against university and gave up after a couple of months. So that test doesn't work. Okay, so how do you recognize phrasal verbs, and how do learner recognize phrasal verbs and learn to say things like he took the dog out for a walk, but avoid things like he found the dog's lead and took out it for a walk. Okay. Some two-part verbs consist of an intransitive verb and a preposition. She laughed. Okay. She laughed at me. Okay. She laughed at me. Hmm. True phrasal verbs consist of a transitive verb and an adverb. He took the washing. He took in the washing. He took in the washing. Okay. He took he took it in the house. In order to understand the difference, you need to know something about transitivity. You need to know that a particle can be either a preposition or an adverb. And you need to know that the most words which look like prepositions can also function as adverbs. That is not too difficult, or is it? Anyway, Here goes. Okay. Some two verbs consist of intransitive verb and a preposition, as in she laughed at me, where laughed is an intransitive verb. It doesn't take an object, which is followed by a prepositional phrase at me. The personal pronoun me is the object of the preposition at. The clause breaks down as she laughed at me. True phrasal verbs, however, consists of a transitive verb and an adverb. So when we say something like he took in the washing, it breaks down as he took in the washing. This becomes clear if we expand the clause to and say he took the washing in the house. Where the object of the preposition in is clearly the house. Now, you can't play this trick with a phrasal verb like knock over because it can't expand the clause as so as to identify an object um, for the preposition. But it becomes clear that in the clause he knocked it over the vase. He didn't knock it over anything. He just knocked it over. So over has no object, which means it isn't functioning as a preposition. It is function as an adverb. So now that you have a grammatical explanation, now you can understand the rules. You're in a position to spot the difference between a two-part verb and a true phrasal verb. Okay. Which of these are true phrasal verbs? In other words, which of them allow the pattern verb, noun, particle? Which of them don't allow the pattern verb, noun, particle when noun is a personal pronoun? Fall for, bring up, pump into, and knock out, get over, put away. Okay. So which of these are true phrasal verbs? Which ones allow pattern verb, noun, particle, but don't allow verb, particle, noun when noun is a personal pronoun? I'm sure you were able to identify bring up, knock out, and put away as true phrasal verbs, but I'm almost sure that you didn't do it by applying my complex and abstract grammatical explanation. Yes, you didn't. You did it by saying to yourself, He filled the girl uh, next door for. No, that's not right. He fell for her is okay. So that's not a true phrasal verb. Okay. So bring up is a true phrasal verb. In other words, you picked out the phrasal verbs not because you not because you can understand or apply the grammatical rules, but because you speak no no you know speak English. You know how to speak English, man. Oh no, that's a flashback to the first question, which is to the first part of this PDF or PowerPoint presentation when he talked about the two teachers who say or two examples. A teacher said, "My students know grammar, but they can't use grammar," and the other one who said, "My son doesn't know grammar, but he speaks good English, correct English." So now you did, but because you know how to speak English. Okay. Slide 13. You can't speak a language. Oh, yes, that's the flashback. You can't speak a language unless you know the grammar. You can't use phrasal verbs unless you know their grammar. You don't know the grammar of phrasal verbs unless you can use Okay, so you can't here, you can't use phrasal verbs. You can't use phrasal verbs unless you know the grammar, unless you know their grammar. So you can't use phrasal verbs unless you know their grammar. You don't know the grammar of phrasal verb. No, that's wrong. Okay, so he deleted that. Similar to deleting this. So you don't know the grammar of phrasal verbs unless you can use them. So here you don't know the grammar of the language unless you can use them. So you need to use them, then you know them. When you say you can't speak a language unless you know the grammar, this entails, among other things, that you can't use phrasal verbs unless you know their grammar. But I hope, I hope demonstrated that even though you weren't aware of the rules, you have been using phrasal verbs with commendable success for many years. And secondly, that you even when or if you understood a complex grammatical explanation, you replied not on the explanation, but on your knowledge of language, of the language. In fact, if you are have a sound sense, if you have a sound sense of um, priorities, you have probably forgotten the explanation altogether. So it is certainly not true to say you can't use phrasal verbs unless you know their grammar. It is not true. You can use the phrasal verbs without knowing their grammar. You can. But now you know, well, what I mean is that's true. You don't know the grammar of phrasal verbs unless you can use them. So when you use them, when you have the ability to use them, when you can use them, you can then know the grammar. Ah, so it is certainly not true to say you can't use phrasal verbs unless you know the grammar. The truth of the matter is you don't know the grammar of phrasal verbs unless you can use them. So you use them first and then you know the grammar. Grammar consists of knowing rules, but in knowing the language. Okay. Okay. So I didn't even so far start doing task 6, but I mean, like writing the answers, it is only reading so far, and even I didn't go through the rest of the the pages of the main file of task 6. But yeah, this is a very good file. You can't speak a language unless you know the grammar. Now it is wrong. You don't know the grammar of a language unless you can speak it. So you need to speak the language and then you learn you learn the grammar. Mm. Oh my goodness. Who made this presentation? What is his name again? Dave Willis. Okay, Dave. Okay. Rather than saying you can't speak the language unless you know the grammar, we should recognize that you don't know the grammar of a language unless you can speak it. Let's go back to present continuous. Okay. If someone really believes that we use the present continuous for things that are happening now, can they really be said to know the grammar of the language? Surely you can't say that someone knows the grammar of the language unless they recognize that these are all grammatical sentences. Again, let's read this again. If someone really believes that we use the present continuous for things that are happening now. Okay, if one of these people can believes that, can they really be said to know the grammar of the language? Okay, once they know this, they know the grammar of the language. Surely you can't say that someone knows the grammar of the language unless they recognize that these are all grammatical sentences. Are all grammatical sentences. Okay. Oh, these are all grammatical sentences. Jack is at university. He's studying economics. We live in Birmingham now, but our son is living in London. I'm playing. Okay. Okay. I'm playing. Ooh. If we reflect on the Arabic language and the Holy Quran, people spoke Arabic. People spoke perfect Arabic in the back in days, Mecca, Medina, and the Arab Peninsula. And then Islam came, Islam came, and then the Holy Quran revealed to the Prophet in their language, Arabic, and later we had we established Muslim established the science of the grammar, the nahu, the Arabic grammar, based on what they say. So they know the language, but they have no grammar book. Okay. Okay. Good. Slide 15. I think that's the last one, isn't it? Yeah, the last one, but last 4 pages. I think that will be part one, and that's it, and then I'll continue later. So, what are the implications of all this for language teachers? Well, it raises a number of interesting questions. How can we justify telling learners things that are simply wrong? Hmm. What, if any, is the rule of formal instruction in grammar? How can we maintain that we are teaching grammar if we teach only the simple things and leave learners to work out the difficult things for themselves? How do learners manage to develop a more complete and sensitive grammar than their teachers are able to explain or demonstrate? Let's look very briefly at these. Okay, so it's going to answer these questions. How can we justify telling learners things that are simply wrong? I don't think we can justify this at all. We can perhaps justify telling partial truth of to begin with. If we go on later to fill in the gaps, so we might justify saying we use the present continuous for things that are happening now, and then going on later to show that continuous aspect covers all meanings I outlined above. Okay, but something in the Meet tab needs your attention. Now stay in the call. Okay, but I want to use. Hmm. But I don't think there can be any justification for transitive teaching, which suggests learners that any sentence containing the word now must be present continuous, and any sentence containing an adverb, a frequency, must be in present and simple aspect. If we do this, one of two things will happen. Learners will believe that we say uh, what we say and trust what they have practiced. This will distort their notion of present continuous and of continuous aspect in general. It may inhibit them from developing a grammar which actually works. Okay, learners. Second thing what happened. Learners will take generalization or rule with a large pinch of salt. They will be prepared to set it to one side when they have evidence from language in use that it simply doesn't work. They may still believe in the rule in the sense of grammar one Ah, as indeed many teachers do, but they were rejected in terms of grammar too, which is what really counts. Second question is, what, if any, is the role of formal instruction in grammar? Formal instruction can, I think, fulfill three functions. One, for some aspects of grammar, particularly those which tell us how the language is constructed. Also, we can give firm and precise rules. We can, for example, tell learners how questions are formed or point out that we don't repeat the subject or object when its place has been taken by a relative pronoun. This is the man who lives next door. This is the man who I was talking about. Formal instruction can fulfill three functions. We can point out that there are two ways of expressing modality. We can do it with an adverbial. Perhaps it will rain tomorrow. Or with a modal verb, it might or could rain tomorrow. There were there are all kind of things one can usefully say about the language. Second, we can usefully correct learners occasionally. This serves the function of preventing fossilization. Learners need to be pushed. They need to be reminded that there is still more to learn. We can provide learners with guidelines which will help them interrupt the language they are exposed to in a way that helps them develop a true grammar too. We could, for example, give them a number of sentences with clauses introduced by to, including examples like the cheapest way is to hire a van. The word grammar seems to be fairly straightforward. Cuba is willing to talk to US. A novelist says girls are ready to have babies by 15. It helps to reinforce classroom practice. It is a good idea to buy a refurbished mobile phone. To see what they can discover about the uses of an infinitive. This will provide them with useful information about the patterns in which to occurs. For example, the fact that is associated not only verbs helps seems, but also with nouns, way, idea, and adjectives, willing, ready. Mm. Later, we might look at clause with to, at clause with that, and identify the different functions that serve. To being mainly to do the function, to do with actions, and that with prepositions. Activities like this not only provide useful input to developing grammar, they also encourage good learning habits. They encourage learners to look carefully and critically at language to see what they can learn from it. Okay. How can we maintain that we are teaching grammar if we teach only the simple things and leave learners to work out the difficult things themselves? This is, in fact, what generally happens. We tell learners that continuous aspect can be used to show that something happens before and after a given time or action, or to mark something as temporary, or to indicate a change that tells them something useful about the potential of the continuous form. But learners then have to learn for themselves when it is more useful to say, I am playing a lot of tennis these days, and to say equally grammatical, I play a lot of tennis these days. Hmm. Okay. Hmm. We explain how passives are formed and then make some simple statements like we use the passive so we can start the sentence with the thing we're talking about, or we use the passive when we aren't interested in the doer of the action. Then we leave learners to work out for themselves the much more difficult question of how the passive is actually used in real discourse. The fact of the matter is that we aren't really teaching grammar 2 at all. We're teaching grammar 1 and leaving learners to work out for themselves the much more difficult grammar. Hmm. How do learners manage to develop a more complete and sensitive grammar than their teachers are able to explain or demonstrate? I wish I know the answer. They must have the ability to abstract regularities and relations from the data they come across when using language. Even the very best grammarians freely admit that they can't offer more than a fragmentary and imprecise, imprecise description of the language. Michael Holiday, for example, can clearly lay claim to being one of the very best grammarians, yet he insisted on calling his weighty and much respected work an introduction to functional grammar. Okay, that's a book we want to get. For this very reason, he felt that to call it simply a functional grammar of English would be close to um, Hubry, I think. This is silent.
hubris,
Hubris. Okay, hubris. It's not silent. Hubris. Yet good learners manage, given enough time to develop a pretty complete grammar of language. Certainly, one which goes beyond even the best description a grammarian can offer. Young children do this at an age when abstract concepts like transitivity, adverbials, are and prepositional phrases are far beyond their understanding. Many adults who can't consciously grasp these concepts nevertheless manage to learn a foreign language. So there is certainly some faculty at work which isn't under concise, conscious control. And finally, the most important question: how can we best help learners? Teaching can help learners in the ways I have described above. But if they are to learn a language as opposite to learning to apply few rules of doubtful validity, then there are a few recommendations worth making. We need to recognize the limitations of what can be achieved by formal instruction. There is no way we can teach a language in its entirely. We will always depend on learners applying their own creativity and initiatives. Teacher can blunt this creativity by giving rules which don't work. This is likely to inhibit learners from developing a system that does work, and more important, it is likely to encourage dependence on the teacher. And instead of working on language for themselves, learners wait to be told how the language works and what they can and can't do. We need to recognize that the language is a meaning system, not a set of do's and don'ts, a form of polite etiquette. The rules that teachers give are designed not to help learners explore how to use a language to create meanings. They are designed to help learners avoid error. But learners, particularly in the early stages, will always make all kind of errors. The only way to avoid error is by restricting language use and by restricting learners' willingness to explore language and experiment language. In other words, by blunting the very creativity which enables us to learn language. We should offer learners plenty of opportunities to use language, both respectively and productively. Learners need exposure to spoken and written language to afford them the data they need to work on in order to build their grammar. They need to produce language in meaningful context to enable them to establish and extend their repertoire.
repertoire,
repertoire. Okay. We should encourage the kind of activity that simultaneously simu- stimulates stimulates learners to think about language, to identify, for example, patterns with two in the example given above. By encouraging this kind of language awareness, may help to sharpen learners' natural learning capacity, their natural tendency to look for patterns and irregularities in the language they encounter. If they are to do this, then we should, as far as possible, give them a real language to work with. The problem with teacher contrived language is that it is all too often designed to illustrate language as the teacher believes it to be, rather than is as it really is. Teachers generate examples and exercises in which the rules about the present continuous work because they suppress a language that contradicts their oversimplification. We should, yeah, that's a big deal now. We should celebrate achievement rather than penalize error. There is no virtue in avoiding error if, in order to do so, learners limit what they have to say to something which is limited and circumscribed. We should be doing everything we can to help learners experiment with language and not inhibiting experiment by stigmatizing error. Oh my goodness. Okay. Okay. Well, we'll stop here. That will be it as part one and go for part two later. And see you again.